So last time we started looking at functions in PHP, and function structure we have discussed, and then we also discussed how you may actually return values. So in this particular example, what we have seen is there's a function called fix names and get three here, William, Henry, and Gates. And then what we do is we convert into one single form. So basically, we can convert into a same format. And then instead of just return the value just by fusing them, one way to return this is to use array method, which will return it as an array, which is a good practice instead of just, put everything together. Then if you want to use a function with also the reference, we have also discussed what you need to do is we will use the reference as well. So in this particular case, now in previous one, we use different, values when you're passing. So that is because we are not going to directly call the values. So what happens when you have the reference that actually alter what we have in originally as well. Right. And one way to do this is because why we do this is it's actually not visible to the outside. And here, when you define it as a global variable, now the variables that we have defined within the function is available to the outside. Right. Now, when you want to load some content from another file, we can usually say include. And what happens when you use include it, all the contents we are going to include into a particular file. So the problem of this is, what if you call the same file multiple times? So if you want to avoid that, so make sure that you include only once a particular file, then you can use include once. Now the problem with the include earlier is, let's say that file is not available. Even with not available, you may actually continue. But there's something, sometimes it's problematic. You need to load the data first. So if it is a must, if it is essential, then instead of include, we have to provide require. So make sure that in this particular case, you will get that require message. Right. Now, sometimes working with object orientation is important. So when we have especially a complex program where when you have like multiple parts, then it's better that you use for object orientation. In standard PHP, how we handle this is we create several functions, and we can embed the course MySQL database. But then when you have getting complex, it's easier for you to manage maybe use of PHP objects. So to create the PHP object, you have to use a class, and then the class, you have all the codes about, let's say, the users in this particular case, and all the variables, right? And all the methods. So it will be easier to manage in that way. So for example, if you look at how you may actually declare classes in PHP, right? So we can have a class statement. And in this particular case, we are creating two attributes, name and password. And we have that is attributes. And the methods, you will have save user. And then to create an object from this class, you can say object new user. And then you can, in this case, you can print and observe the creation of the object. So as you can see earlier, if you want to refer, you can use a new keyword. You can see the first one is a use of user class. We create a variable object and we will say it's a new user. So what happens in the first one, when you say object equal new user, it simply assign object to the user class. But the second one, you can notice we are actually passing two different values. The first one is a name, second one is a password, which assign. So we pass all the parameters so that these can be assigned into internal variables. Right. Now, if you want to discuss how you actually may access the different properties and also the methods. Now, for example, when you say properties, especially in my previous user example, we talk about two values, the name and the password. So that name is a property, which means we have to say object, arrow key, and then you can have name. And the second one is the password. Third, if you have particular function, then you can use object method form. Right now, let's look at the example. Right. In this particular example, what I would like to know is I'm going to create a user class, and then we have two variables, and then we have one method. And now the first one, we just create the user, and then we create the object name, and then we'll print the attributes. The second ones, you can see, we actually assign two values, and then we'll try to print. At the same time, we call it. So let me see how this will work. So I'm going to use our online platform, PHP Online, right? So let's try and test this. So the first thing we are going to create a user class. So we say class user. And within the class user, we will say public. These are the properties, that the name and the password. Right. Then we have a function. We say save user. So within the function save user, we will say echo save user code goes here. We put up a semicolon again. Then we close this. We close, and that's it. Okay, so there's an unmatched bracket. So here is our class definition. So let's first yeah, this let's run this. Spelling mistake. Yeah, I think that's all we have. So let's create an object now. So the creation of object, let's say dollar object, and then we'll say it's a new user, and we are going to make a print of the object. So let's see, I had a mistake there as well. Okay, semicolon. Exactly. So now you can see we have created a variable object, but that we have not assigned any values. Okay. The next one, what you see is we create or we assign values. So let me take this. So we have object name will assign with some values. So now we assign both the name and the passwords. So let's print it. But make sure that we have an echo here as well. Otherwise, it will not be separated properly. So I set my pass. Let's print our dollar object. And then we call the function. So as you can see, now you have seen that this is update the object variable. We assign the value Joe and my pass as the username and password. Right. Small exercise. First, try to finish this and then raise your hands. Once you finish, then I'll move on to the small example. Okay, let's do the small exercise. Okay, so what I want to create is define a class named car, include the following properties: brand, model, year, include the following methods: start, print a message indicating that the car is starting, then drive. Right. Create this and share me the coding on PHP objects. And the second one is, you can see these indexes are empty, which means basically you add them and then you can simply retrieve them. Now, like in dictionaries, like here we can have associative arrays in PHP we normally code. So instead of use of a numerical index, we can use keys and the values. So for example, in this particular case, instead of having 0 and 1, we can use a copier, for example, for copier and multipurpose. Then the inkjet for inkjet printer, the laser for laser printer, and then you can have photo for photographic paper. And you can see in this example, you are going to access the last one is printing only the as an associative array. So use of these associative arrays are quite useful, especially when we have a database where we, get the data into MySQL database, and then you can retrieve it, right? So this will be very useful in case if you are using associative arrays. Right, now you can use array method or array always whenever you want to access something. Now, for example, here you can see we are creating an array method. And in this case, we have copier, inkjet, laser, and photo. And the next is you using associative array. In this particular case, we are using array keyword. So this is direct, and then you can use the same thing using array method. Now, whenever you want to access, right? So in this particular case, you have array method. And then once you do that, then for each item, we can go through using for each loop. And then you can see we can print the item, and then we can increase the value by 1, right? So that you are going to go through the numerical array. In this case, we are using for each. Similarly, the same way we can make use of going through associative array. Again, we can use a for each. In this particular case, we will specify the item as well as the description. So the array that we have created, we have two values, or simply we can have keys and also the values. So those we can take them separately and then we can print them. Right. Okay, so with that basis, we can now focus on accessing MySQL using PHP. So most of the cases, the choice for PHP as a database, we will use MySQL. Nowadays, you can also use like NoSQL database like MongoDB. But let's take an example where we can use MySQL with PHP. Now, the first thing is we need to understand the whole process of connecting to a MySQL database. So the step starts with connecting to MySQL, and then you are selecting a database. And then simply we can prepare some query string. And this query string can be used to create the message. In this particular case, you can execute the query. And then once you execute the query, you can get the results, and then we can, prepare it for the display. Usually, we have to use, for example, the most commonly used, you can put it into a table, for example. So you can format the outcome so that you can put into a web page. So the same setup we can have, for example, if you have multiple, execution. And finally, you have to disconnect from the MySQL database. Right. Now, one thing that we want to do is you always want to connect to the MySQL database. So usually you can have what we call the login file, where you can keep the information that you want for the logging to the database. Usually the server, if it is your local machine, we say usually use local host. And then the database that you want to connect, in this particular example, we use publications. And then we can have like username and password. So those things we can keep it in a separate file. So every time when you need it, then you may actually use this. So remember that use of require and include method. So you can use one of these depend on your requirement. So connecting part, you can see here that now we have stored our information under the login. Now, once you that you can actually load that information in here, and then we can actually use to connection. So for that, actually, we use MySQLi, which is MySQL connecting string in object-oriented way that we are going to use it. So we will create a new object of MySQLi, and with passing server as well as database, username, password, and then finally database. And if there's a error, then you can actually make a message saying that there's a error in this. I told you the next step is, once you actually make the connection, then executing a particular query. So in this particular example, you will see we have a query string. So we have, for example, we are going to select everything from the table classics. So that is a query. And the next one, you will see you execute the query, which means we have the connection object and we use query method, and then we pass the query that we have selected in this particular case. We are selecting everything from the classics, so which is the result. So if there's a mistake, we can say, okay, it's a fatal error. The next step is, once you have the results, is the display. Okay, so here is how we can actually use. So you can see everything we put into a single file. And then in this particular case, the first line is accessing the login information. We created the connection. And then we have the query, and then we execute the query. Right, now, once you have the execute the query, we should know how many rows are there. The idea is, I'm going to use here in this example, you see, I'm using a for loop to go through each and every case, right? And in this particular case, we will get the number of rows first, and depend on that, we are going to display the information that we have created under this. So the classics, if you remember, when we discussed the MySQL, we actually created this part, right? So you can use the same database to try this, the connection. Right. One thing to note that is actually you fetch all the results at the same time. So for example, here we have the execute everything, and then we will fetch everything at the same time. But one other way is you can actually fetch a row at a time. So what you do is, basically in this particular example, it's the same thing. But what you do is you take a row at a time. So this example, you will see we fetch the result as a row, and then we will execute them. So that is another way that actually you can do that, especially when you have a very large database. Loading everything at once might create a problem because our resources are limited. So in that particular case, the best thing would be you execute a row at a time. Right. So the last one that we have to discuss is the close connection. So you can see that we can end the resource by saying the close, as well as we can make the close connection to the connection string that we have created here. Right. The next thing that we need to discuss is how you may actually handle, especially when we send and receive information through the browser. So the one thing that we would like to discuss is whenever we use browser to send the input, there are two ways that we can actually use: the get and the post. So if you use get, what you need to remember is it uses associative array underscore get. If you use post, it will use the associative array underscore post. But if you ask me like which one is preferred, if you're using a browser to pass this information, always we prefer the post. So remember that is very, very important. Because if you use get, all the information will be displayed in the browser, especially when you look at the URL, and it contains all the sensitive information. So make sure that when you use post method, when you want to more appropriate way of transfer data through the browser. Right. So once you actually read whatever the information, you can use the underscore post, and within brackets, with these square brackets, you can have whatever the attribute name. Right? You can either use single quotes or double quotes here. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So in this, the first example, we will start looking at how to create a table within PHP. So you can see the query string we have defined using the SQL statements for creating a table, and then you execute it. Similarly, if you want to remove, same thing, the query string we use whatever the SQL statement to remove the table, in this particular case, dropping the table. Third, adding data to an existing table. So in this particular case, in the connection string, you connect to the required database first. And once you do that, we will have an insert statement to insert the values to the required table. So in this particular piece of example, we are actually adding some data items to a table called cats. The retrieving data we already have seen, but in this particular example, you will see you can use many ways to display information, but one simple way to is you create some table structure and then you display them. So this example, you will see we are doing the same. And then in this particular case, we get the information, and then we will actually put into a tabular form. Similarly, update is also the same. In SQL statement, we already discussed how to update a value. So for example, right, we change the name of the cat. So you can see earlier the name is Charlie. Spellings, we change it to Charlie using CHARLIE. Right, so that is update statement again. So the format is you write this under the query string and then you execute it. Next, deletion of data. So in this particular case, we actually delete a record based on the name of the cat. So that delete statement is a query string, and then we follow the same. We use to execute the query, and the resource is stored under the resource variable. If it is there's missing the resource, which means there's some problem with the accessing the data. Right. Now that we have looked at basic data handling with both MySQL and PHP, the next part will be how we can handle forms, because usually this is what we do. We use form to collect the required data. So first of all, you should understand how you actually may use. So first one is we need to create the form using form open tag and then /form the close tag. Within the form, we have to define what the form method is. In this example, you will notice that I have used post method. And then we have direct, which file actually process the form information. So in this particular example, we name our file as form handling. And then this outcome actually post will direct it to form test, which will further manipulate the input and output. Then you have two buttons to say the type, and then finally you have a submit button and you have a text box where you can type your name. And once you submit, it will handle through the form test PHP file. So one way of testing your submitted form is you can check whether there's already sent some information. So underscore post means we have used the post array where we will check whether the name attribute is set. If it is set, we are going to assign the value. If it is not, then we put the information saying that it is not entered. Right. Now, when we work with, especially in web applications, now we have to store some information throughout our consecutive sessions. Now, for example, let's say that you are creating a commercial store application, web-based application, where the customers will explore at least several pages within your site. So the session can be used to information to keep when user going from one place to another, right? So the idea is until the user closes the browser, we can keep those information. And creating a session is easy. So usually we start creating a session start function, and then that values that we are going to set can be taken from underscore session. Right. So once you actually create the session start, right? And what values that you want to use within the session, we will put inside the session array. So what we are going to create is usually we have underscore session and we put up a variable name and we insert a value, right? So what you could do is we can actually save it into a variable once you call that within the underscore session. Now, if you look at within the code, how we can actually start this. So you can see in the beginning of the document, we can say session start. And whatever the values that you want to access, you can then access through session and whatever the variable name you have stored inside. So in this particular case, you will see the username is already stored. Second one, you can also see how we can actually check when you say have a session start, and we can get the person's username, and then you can, just output and see whether it's working. If the session works perfectly, so if you're using different files and if you start saying session start, and if you try the same thing with the different files, you will notice that it's available in different files as well. And that is exactly what we want to do. Now, sometimes we have to end the session. So you can actually do this, two ways. One is you can use unset, especially if you are like working the session and if you want to remove one or two session variables. The second method we will call session destroy, which actually can destroy whole session. This might be useful, for example, when you end up at the end of the session. So we can make sure that none of the session variables are available. Because one of the examples that we have seen is it's mandatory that once you create it and once you edit properly. Right. That's all what we have. Now, the next thing is, I think I have told you the other day that I want to introduce the group work. So basically, the topics that I want to cover under the theory, I almost done. We can talk about some available frameworks depend on your requirement, but then otherwise the basic material we have finished. The next thing would be now by using the technologies that we have discussed within this module, we are supposed to create a small web application. And I told you this time we are going to, as collectively, we are going to develop the program. Right now, first of all, let's form some groups. So first of all, I will create a breakout session. And let's, okay, maybe, I will stop the recording for the time being. So in this particular case, what we are going to create is MCQ question answer platform using the web technologies. So this is, if you look at, as a single problem, so this might not be able to finish within like couple of weeks time. So we have done 6 sessions. We have about, 4 sessions to, officially go. But then you can work on offline on the project. So the plan is there are already available platform that you can actually look at it. Have you used Kahoot platform earlier in our course?
Yeah, one session that we share.
Okay. So just to show you like how Kahoot works, have you participate Kahoot session early?
That there are some session and research related session in that time. One of doctor has shared that on some quiz given and like that.
Okay. So I hope you are familiar, right? So just to show you like, how the Kahoot look like. I'm not saying that you should develop something like this, but it's we can discuss exactly what we want to do, right? Now, for example, let me share the interface. This is a bit complex, but what we need to develop is a very simple one. So usually in the Kahoot platform, uh, somebody has to first log into the system. So once you log into the system, there will be a dashboard where you will have, this is mainly now we are going to plan only to create posing MCQ like questions, right? So for example, if you want to create, this is a dashboard where this dashboard contains couple of things. There are like already developed quizzes you can discover. You can go to library where already you prepared MCQ questions. There are reports, groups, marks, place, and all. But in our case, you have to think of is creating a library where you can, once you create a quiz, you can keep inside the library. And if possible, you can create some quiz reports. Let me show you the creation uh, interface. When you click on create button, this will prompt you to create a quiz. And quizzes there are several, but let's start with the blank one. When you say blank one, it looks like this. So you already have some format where to type your question, and then some answers are there. So let me set up the setting. Let me say that this is let's say quiz test, right? So quiz test for IT509. Right. Now, in this one, let's say when you create, you can make it, so we don't have to make it very complex. Once you give a name for the quiz, so it will display it here. And this is the first quiz problem. So let me say this is problem 1. You can type, right? Whatever the problem, and then you can provide the answers. So let's say this is answer 1. We can say answer 2, right? And then answer 3 and answer 4. Right? And then we need to select which one is the correct answer. So let me say my answer 1 is the correct answer. So let's add another question, right? Okay, so the format, I'm going to have a quiz format. So this is, let's say, problem 2, right? And let's put up some answers. Again, answer 1, let's say answer 2. So you can decide how many answers you want to have it, right? Again, another question. Let's say problem number 3. And let's say answer 1, answer 2. Let's say answer 3, right? And once you create this, you can save it, and which will save it in the library, right? Okay, we have not select the answer. So let me fix the problem. So I will select the answer as 1. Right, let me save it. Now, once I actually create the quiz, now I can start it. So let me use start, and it will present an interface where you can actually participate in the quiz. So what users has to do is they have to go into the link www.kahoot.it. Can you guys just log into this? Go to www.kahoot.it. When you go there, you can see it will request a game pin which will connect to this Kahoot. You can just type some numbers, or nickname should be your name, not the game pin. And the users can actively participate. Right now, when you have the students, this is like online platform. You can say start. Depend on what settings we have, it will present the quizzes one at a time. So as you can see, the order is random, and there will be a time running out, and the student will get an interface where they can actually select the answer. So this will give you a summary, for example, what are the students' choices and whether their answers are correct or not. And the next, when you press next button, what happens? Simply, you will get like whoever select the correct answer will get some marks. Actually, they have set up this as the quicker you answer the question, that you will get more marks. We don't have to do that, but simply we are going to create our own platform. It's not Kahoot. I'm just showing you like, possibilities. So when you click next, then it will present the next problem. As you can see, it's again random. Again, the timer goes on. And then, yeah, students can, select the answers. if all the students select the answers before the timer finish, then you go to the next part, right? So as you can see here, this time there are 3 students correctly answered the questions, right? And then we are going to go to the last one. So it will present the third problem. Again, timer goes on, right? And then we are going to go to the last one where we have a small podium where you can actually display who's the third place, the second place, depend on their names, and the first place is. So that's how the one way of this quiz works. Then I have the option. There are a lot of options, but let's simplify them. One of the interesting thing is what I see is I can actually go to the summary where I can see how my students performed. So you can see that this will display, overall performance, and it will generate a small report. The report contains some of the information about like how accurately students were playing. Like, for example, in this particular case, it shows you all the players who participated and whether their answers correct or not. Then the questions, the performance of the questions, how hard the questions were, right? So that is basically how it works. I would like to share one more thing before I go to the library. So library contains a lot of, the quizzes that I have created. Now, this is the quiz that I have created with you. Now, what you can do is we can assign it offline, right? So I can say assign, and then I can actually create. What happened, this will generate a link where I can actually share with the students. So for example, I'm going to share now with you. Just click and just participate to the quiz and just take the feeling of how this is working. So I'm going to share everyone the link. Yeah, if you click the link, right? I want everybody to do the same. So it will actually display, right? So I have to put up a name. So I will put this as test. And then I can start. So this is individual. The students can actually participate for the quiz. They'll get the same set of questions, again at random. So in this one, actually, it goes one after the other, I guess. So you get the personal messages. So I'll go to the next one. In this one, it was not randomized. So it goes there. So later on, actually, you can see your performance. But I think this is the easiest one to actually develop the problem. So I hope you got that idea about what exactly we need to do. You don't have to mimic this platform. So this is just one example, and there are many other quizzes. So project like this, we have several parts. First of all, we know we have front end, we have a back end, and there are several things that we need to develop. So as a group, which you work on this, what we can do is we can actually separate out the task and each group can work on one single part. And what ideally what should happen once we combine everything together, at the end of the project, we should be able to see a working prototype. What I say working prototype is not a fully fledged program application, but then everybody can contribute to build a small web application where we are going to develop MCQ answer platform where we might be able to use, right? So instead of doing several, problems, so this time I want to focus on a one single web application where each group works on several parts. So the currently what I have prepared is I can assign one of you to the front-end development. So we can have a group who will be work on front-end development, right? So yeah, so let me just put down what we could do. So the project is what we have the MCQ development platform, and you are free to imagine by looking at the similar platform like Kahoot when you are developing the system. So one group when work on, let's say, front-end development, or we can make it a several groups. So one group, let's say group A, I will put it like this, or we can discuss several parts you can discuss. You can use in this one, when they work on the front-end development, they can work on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. On that, they can create the authentication like a login, and we need to design how they are going to log into the system. And then we have to create use authentication. Let me first put the tasks. So the first one is the front-end development. Under the front-end development, we want to do a couple of things. The first one is the use of authentication, right? We have to ask the person to log into the system. And then we need to display a dashboard. Once you authorize the person, we need to create a dashboard to just to show the user information. And then also the quizzes, if they have already created quizzes, we want to show the quizzes, right? Things like that. And then 1.3, we should be able to generate some quizzes. So the quiz creation, we will create separate quizzes each and everyone can create. And then we can create this one. And then the second one is the backend development. The other groups, let's say we have the second part is backend development. We need to focus on few things, right? First one, under the backend, we want to design a database. So the first task would be to database design, right? So we have to think about user information, quiz information, quizzes, the questions, the answers. Then we have to manage the users. Sorry, we have to manage the users. We can say, we'll say under the database we created. Okay, we'll say quiz management. So 2.2 will have. So we have to have the database design, and then we can manage the users.
Excuse me, Doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor, is the Kahoot that interface? I don't know.
Which one?
Kahoot. Doctor, we see only Kahoot .it
Okay,
interface.
sorry about that. Yeah, I will notice. Yeah, can you see now?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, sorry about that. And then we also have to manage, question and answer management. What we need to do is basically we have to create associate with the all the quiz and answers. So the 2.4 would be the quiz and answer management for each and every parts that you can actually use that, right? So basically, these are the main tasks that we need to do. And how we are going to handle it, we can discuss later on interactively if you want to do like in what we did. Actually, it's a quite time consuming. That means real-time interactions. I don't want to, do it, but if anyone of your group wants to do that, we can do the real-time quiz participation, but at least offline quiz participation. That means when you provide the link, you log into the system, and then you select a quiz, and when you say play, you can play a particular quiz. That would be enough for that, right? So those are the particular things that we need to do this. And also, like, there are other things that we can do. For example, here I have not mentioned about the reporting, summarization. There are a lot of other works that we can do, but these are the main things that I would like to work on as a different groups. Okay, so the time is up. So I'm going to conclude for the today's session. So I hope that you got an idea like what are you going to do as the project for this. So first of all, I will post this information. So give me the preference, which parts that the group wants to take it. So for example, here we have 6 parts which I can distribute. If there are more than 6, we can decide whether 2 groups can work on one, especially depend on the effort that you want to put. I can allow 2 groups to work in different parts of the project, right? So I will show you this information. So together with your group numbers, please let me know your preference. And next week, let's see how to collaborate each other. Collaboration, how we are going to make it. So let's have a single platform where we are going to collaborate each of the groups to complete the project. Because in this one,
Doctor, small request that when we send the group numbers, Doctor, can we suggest this group will we do? Because otherwise, I think a little bit complicated sometimes. That's why if it.
you mean the group numbers?
Yeah, I said that we send the group one and then Doctor can assign.
No. Yeah. So just send me the group, and then your preferred part, like whether it's 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. So there are 7, work that we need to complete the whole platform. There are many others. If there are many more groups,
Because Doctor, yes, I just thought that some of the people already sometimes that same thing will be requesting. That's why I asked if that Doctor can seem like this one, this group will be do because
no, I
blind.
mean, the point Prasang is like this. So I want to give you preference.
Okay.
When you preference, it's not only a one. Let's give us your first 3 choices.
Yeah, that's right. Because most of the group already sending me some of the same preference. That's why
No, no,
that's
no.
I will be
No, no,
completely.
no. I mean, like it's like this. Like, let me make the final decision.
Yeah,
So just let me know your group members, and then also what you prefer.
one and two,
Three
three.
choices in
Yeah.
an order, right?
Okay. Thank you,
Then
doctor.
I will make the final assignment, and the next week we'll meet with that assigned task, and I will provide you more details what you are supposed to do, right?
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, doctor.
Okay, thank you then.
Doctor, excuse me.
Yes.
We have done something until the session 2 started onward, Doctor, with the admin panel student management system until the generate report also.
Okay.
What about that? Or if you go for this one, we will go for a front end development and until dashboard, first 3 tasks.
Yeah, whatever your choices, I think Anjana, what I want to know is just send me the what you prefer.
Yeah.
And then if none of your group members are interested in that part, directly you can have it. But if there are competition, let's say 2 of your groups are wants to do the same thing, then I'm going to make a call. I'm going to randomly pick one of the groups to implement. If you've already done some work, and then if you want to do something different,
Yeah, we have
you
done the
can.
student management system for the Royal College. Start with the admin and the authentication part until they generate the PDF also.
Yeah, I understand. But only
Uh,
Manjana is like now, since everything is depends on your back end, for example, if how you are going to connect to everything, because it's only a part of this. That means use on authentication part you have done, it seems.
Doctor, I will be collecting all the information group wise, and I will be send the final one for the doctor. And
Okay, yeah,
I
sure.
think
We
it will
will
be good.
do like that.
Otherwise, all that's right. I will be manage that one, and I
Okay,
know
thank you, Prasanga.
sure. Otherwise, doctor will be getting so many emails today. That's why
I
I
understand.
I
Yeah.
manage that one.
Okay.
Sure, doctor.
Okay, then we'll meet next week with the group work. So we will be working together in the session. So I will explain more details on the project, right? How to handle each of these sessions. Thank you. Then we'll meet next week.